Hi everybody, this is Bonnie with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I want to show you how to make the Phoenix shawl. I'll go ahead and put some other photos of this right here. This particular shawl features the small honeycomb cable as well as the low front ridge and some beautiful yarn by the Yarnsmith, and I'll make sure that the information for the yarn is in the video description below, so you can check that out, or you can feel free to source locally hand-dyed yarn. Now, with a lot of my designs, if you don't want to use the fingering weight yarn that I chose for this particular design, feel free to use whatever you have in your stash, and that includes larger size yarn. Just know that you're going to get a chunkier result than I did, which in some cases is fine. And also make sure that you size your hooks to the yarn that you choose. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need. For this project, I'm going to be using this beautiful hand-dyed yarn of these three colors, and these are all hand dyed by the Yarnsmith. I'm going to go ahead and put the link where you can purchase this in the video description. This is beautiful yarn that I have sourced locally from a local indie dyer, and let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is a fingering weight yarn, 75% merino wool and 25% nylon. This is a superwash variety. And again, this is a number 1 fingering, or what we would call sock weight. And each of these hanks has 463 yards, which is a generous amount of yardage. This color is called Mad About Saffron. This multicolored is called Merry and Bright. And this beautiful color is called Dabbling Duck. I will also be using a size G or 6 or 4.00 millimeter crochet hook. You also are going to want to have a yarn needle and a pair of sharp scissors handy. And for this project, I'm recommending that you have a couple of stitch markers so that you can mark the center, well, where we will be adding in additional stitches. To begin, we're going to be using the blue-green color, or Dabbling Duck, and we're going to start with our slip knot and a chain 4. After the chain 4, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first stitch, first chain. We do a slip stitch. Now you're going to end up with a very tiny little circle to work in. Now we're going to chain 3, and we're going to work 9 double crochets into the center of this small ring. So I'll go ahead and finish working these 9 stitches. So this is what you should have after completing row 1 with the 9 double crochets. And for the record, the turning chain does not count as a double crochet. I just consider those turning chains in the written pattern. All right, for row 2, we're going to turn. We're going to chain 3. And we're going to work 2 double crochets into each stitch. So go ahead and work 2 double crochets into each of these stitches across, and then I'll show you how the row ends. So after working 2 double crochets in each stitch, you should have a total of 18 double crochets. When we get to this turning chain, we're going to work 3 double crochets into that turning chain space. Okay, just like that. Now we're going to turn to work row 3. Go ahead and chain 3. So after the chain 3, we're going to work 2 double crochets into that very first stitch. And then after that, we're going to begin working our pattern stitch, or at least for this section. We're going to work row 1 of the honeycomb stitch, and I'll show you how we're going to work that. We're going to skip the next 2 stitches. I've wrapped my hook for treble crochet or front post treble. We're going to work front post treble crochets in each of the next 2 stitches. That's 1, 2. Now we're going to work behind these 2 stitches by coming into the opening here, the hole behind. Let me go ahead and I'll do that again. Let me explain first. We're going to work behind these 2 stitches by coming into the opening here, which is the large hole right here, and we're going to work a front post treble in the first stitch and then the second stitch that we skipped. This is a little more complicated, but once you've done this a few times and you understand, it makes it easier. Also, I don't want to minimize this. You want to use the nerve ending in your tall man finger and in your thumb so that you can help guide the hook as to know where to go. So I'm going to come in behind, and I'm going to locate that first stitch with my thumb and my finger, which is right here. After I've located it, I've worked my hook around it like so. Pull up the loop, and then I complete the treble, the front post treble, and then do that again, coming into that same opening, and there should be 1 stitch left right here. Go ahead and wrap that hook around that stitch, and then we complete another front post treble, but yet worked behind the last 2 stitches. Okay, that's the first half of the honeycomb, or for the row 1, and then we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, now this is going to be easier working in front of those last 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in this stitch and then in this stitch. Okay, let's pause and take a look at that for a minute. So you see how these 2 stitches are worked behind these, and then these 2 stitches are worked in front of those stitches. So you're making a very large V, which is going to be the bottom of the honeycomb. After that, we are going to work 2 stitches, 2 double crochets in each of the next 4 stitches. And this is another way of adding increases for this project. So 2 stitches. We're going to work 2 more stitches. The next stitch, 2 more, and that next stitch, and then 2 more in the next stitch. Okay, now I want to pause because I'm going to add some stitch markers at this point. It really doesn't matter what color they are or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the 4 of the 8 stitches. I'm going to pick the 4 stitches that are in the center. So let's skip these 2, and then the next stitch I'm going to put a stitch marker here. And what I'm doing is I'm marking the 4 stitches that we're going to add increases in for the row that follows this row. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So do you see that? I've put stitch markers here in the 3rd stitch of these increases and in the 6th stitch. And you'll understand that better when we come around the next time. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat what we just did here on this side. So let's go ahead and do that. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next stitch. I know this is a little dark to see, but when we finish the beginning of this, it's going to be very helpful to have the dark background. Okay, so now we're going to work behind these 2 stitches by coming in behind, and then we're going to work a front post treble around this stitch and then around this stitch. So let's go ahead and isolate this. Again, I'm using the nerve endings in my finger and thumb quite a bit in order to do this. So that's 1. And then I'm going to come in again behind those 2 stitches to find this stitch that I'm going to work. This is the 2nd stitch that was skipped. And then we work another front post treble. Now we're going to work the other side. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. 1, and here's the 2nd one. 2, and now we're going to work in front of these 2 stitches, and we're going to work front post trebles here and then here. And then after that, we're going to work 3 double crochets into the turning chain. 1, 2, and 3. And so this is what you should have after completing 3 rows. I know it's hard to see the honeycomb stitch just yet, but give it some time and it's going to come to life pretty soon. All right, so now 4, this is going to be row 4. Chain 3. We're going to work 2 double crochets into that first stitch. After that, we're going to work back post double crochets, and let me show you how to do that. Go ahead and work back post double crochets over the next 2 stitches, just coming in the back. I'm working it like this, and we're going to do the stitches as they appear in order. You're not trying to cross anything at this point. We're just working back post double crochets. You're going to have 4 of these over each of the sides of the honeycomb where those stitches were crossed, either in front or in back. We still do it the same way. We're going to do back post double crochets until we get to the stitch markers. Okay, almost there. We have 2. And then we get to the stitch marker. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a quick little count. So we have the 2 at the very beginning, 2 stitches, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 stitches. So we have 14 double crochets, and then when we get to the stitches where we marked with the stitch markers, we're going to work 2 double crochets in each of these. So 2 double crochets in that first stitch, and the next 3, so 4 stitches in a row, so that's 2 stitches there. 2 stitches in that third stitch, and 2 stitches in the fourth. Okay, and then we're going to pause again, and we're going to move our stitch markers, but let's just take a look at what we just did. So the stitch marker that had the stitch that had the stitch markers right here, so we have 2, 4, 6, 8. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move our stitch marker to here and to here. And this is just going to make it easier each row to know where to put those increases in. And if you're not sure, let's just look at this. So these 2 we skip. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to put the other stitch marker here. I'm going to pause so you can actually see what I've done here. So we had the back post double crochets here, and then we came to the stitch markers and we worked 2 double crochets in each of those 4 stitches, thereby going from 4 to 8 stitches. So we're increasing, and this is going to happen every time we come to this. This is how we grow our shawl. So we skip those first 2 that we made, put the stitch marker in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and in the 6th stitch, just like we did before. And then now we're just going to continue on. So this is how we're going to work in pattern stitch. So now we're back to working our back post double crochets over the rest of the stitches in this row. I'm going to go ahead and just work these with you so that you see what it looks like. Now once we get many more stitches in a row, you're just going to be repeating what we're doing on a smaller scale here. We're just going to be repeating that more times, and you'll see how this pattern works itself out in the next few rows. Okay, also this is with the back side facing. So whenever you're working on the even number rows, you're going to have the back side facing. And whenever you work on the odd number rows, you're going to have the front side facing. So I'll go ahead and finish this up. And again, see how I'm working as the stitches appear. And if you're not sure, you can look at the V's at the top and just take the stitches in order. Again, being careful to use the nerve endings in your finger and thumb to help guide which of these stitches comes next. All right, we're going to back post double crochet in those last 2 stitches. And then we're going to double crochet 3 double crochets into that turning chain. And you're going to do this at the end of each row. Start off with 2 double crochets in the first stitch like we did here, and then you're going to end with 3 double crochets. And don't worry about the numbers being a little bit off, because this does work itself out because you're going back and forth with the same pattern. All right, so let's go ahead and turn, and this is what you should have after completing 4 rows. This is very interesting, the way this yarn is working itself out. Just know though that if you purchase the hand-dyed yarn, it's natural to have these variances in color, and that's what kind of helps to give it its beauty. All right, so let's go on to row number 5. We're going to chain 3, 2 double crochets into that first stitch. Again, another increase. Okay, now we're going to continue this honeycomb pattern. But now, in order to do this in the particular style, I'm actually going to work the second part of the honeycomb for row 3 here for you. So let me go ahead and do that. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. Now working behind these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in this stitch and then in this stitch. I'm going to move along a little bit faster on this row than I did on the other, but coming behind again. Let's get the next stitch. So this is really like the first part of the stitch, of the honeycomb stitch that we did on row 1, but row 3 is the opposite. And you'll understand once I complete this next section. Now we're going to skip 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in the next 2 stitches, working in front of those 2 stitches. I'm going to front post treble into the 2 stitches that we skipped. All right, after that, we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble into the next 2 stitches, working behind those 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble into 2 stitches that we skipped. All right, and now we have 4 more stitches where we're going to work the pattern stitch again. But let's stop and pause, and I want you to see how these stitches open up, they go up, and then they close at the top. It's a little tricky to see with this variegated yarn, but the more we do this, you'll see that. And you'll see how this is going the opposite of this. And as we work more rows, you're going to see how these honeycombs interact with each other. Okay, so now we're going to do the first part of row 3, which is working in front. Let me show these. Skip the next 2. Front post treble and the next 2 stitches, working in front of those 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in those 2 stitches that we skipped. So you can see we've just maintained the pattern where these stitches go down and then up, down and then up. And that brings us again to the section with the stitch markers, and we're going to work 2 double crochets in each of these. This is just the way to crochet the shawl continuously without having a sharp corner like you would have with a chain 2 corner. And 2 more here. And I'm going to pause to make sure that I actually did what I intended to do here. It's easy to kind of get along and not pay attention. So 2, 2, 2, and 2 double crochets in each of those. Let's go ahead and move the stitch markers. Now if we go ahead and do this each time, it makes it easier in the sense that we don't have to think as hard. as we're crocheting along each time. So we're going to skip those 2 stitches and put the stitch marker in the 3rd stitch and then in the 6th stitch. If it'll let go, there we go. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's right here. So you should have 2 extra stitches. These are actually the increases. 2 extra stitches on each side of where you put these stitch markers. All right. So now we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we did on the other side. All right, so let's go ahead and skip the next 2 stitches. We're going to front post treble in those next 2 stitches. And let's see, we're going to be working in front over here. So we're going to work behind these. So you're basically starting this row and 2 rows previously in the same manner. All right, so now for the next part, we're going to skip 2, front post treble, the next 2 stitches, and we're going to work in front of these 2 stitches. And we're going to front post treble in those 2 stitches that we just skipped. And then skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and then working behind these 2 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 2 stitches that we skipped. So let me get all of my threads here. All right, that was my fault. And then the second stitch. All right, and then we're going to work this one more time. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches, and now we're going to work in front of those last 2 stitches. We work front post trebles again. And then we're going to work 3 double crochets into the turning chain. All right, that was a lot. So let's go ahead, before we do anything else, this is what I like to do, is to do a spot check, do a visual check to make sure that these stitches are going in the right direction. How do you do that? This is going down and then up, down and then up. And we have our increases here. Down, then up, down, and then up. And that looks good. As more of these honeycombs come online, you're going to see a very beautiful pattern developing, or at least that is my hope. All right, so we're going to chain 3 for the next row. This is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be row 6. And we're going to work 2 double crochets. Let's get that thread out of the way. 2 double crochets into the first stitch. Now when you have the back side facing on the honeycomb, we're just going to work back post double crochets. So let's go ahead and start them. After that increase, oh, we've got a lot of static electricity. That piece of thread does not want to go away. All right, so we start here on that next stitch. Once we put those increases in, and we're just going to work, well, got away from me, back post double crochets And we're going to work these until we get to the stitch markers. So go ahead and work these back post double crochets until you get to the first stitch marker right here. And once we get to that first stitch marker, again, 2 double crochets in each of those next 4 stitches, or the stitches defined by the stitch markers. So that's the first stitch, and here's the second stitch. We're going to work 2 double crochets in there, and 2 into the third stitch, and 2 into that fourth stitch. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this on every single row, just in case you're worried that I am. I will not. But we're going to go ahead and move our stitch markers. So go ahead and do that every time. So that's 1, 2, and the third stitch. Again, it's the center 4 of those 8 stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6. Just like we did the last 2 times. So let's just take a look at those stitches. So that you skip those 2, put 1 in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and then those other 2 additional stitches will be worked into the pattern stitch on the next row. And then after that, we resume our back post double crochets. So go ahead and work those back post double crochets in every stitch until you get to the turning chain. Once you get to the end of the row, we're going to work 3 double crochets into the turning chain. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. This is with the back side facing. This is what we have. Of course, the nicer side is going to be with the front side facing, especially as these honeycombs become more defined. All right, so now we're on to row number 7, and it's going to look an awful lot like row number 3. Actually, it's going to be a repeat of row 3, with the exception of we're just going to have more stitches to work in the honeycomb pattern stitch. Let's go ahead and chain 3, work 2 double crochets into that first stitch, and then once again we skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the next 2 stitches. We're going to work behind these 2 stitches, and front post treble crochet into those 2 stitches that we skipped. Let me show you another thing. See how large my loop is here? Don't let that bother you too much if you're having a hard time keeping those loops smaller, because the row that works after this with the back post will even this all out and it will be fine. I just wanted to make mention of that in case you're having trouble, like I occasionally do. Let's try that one again. Okay. All right. So now we're going to skip 2 stitches. Front post treble in those next 2 stitches. Now working in front of these 2, we're going to front post treble in those next 2, or the 2 stitches rather that we skipped. Okay, and then we just continue that all the way across until you get to the first stitch marker. So, and I'm going to simplify this. This is what we're calling a back cross, because you work behind the stitches, and then this is a front cross. So back cross, front cross, back cross, front cross, across there. And go ahead and work that until you get to the first stitch marker, and I'll show you my work so that you can confirm that you're doing it the correct way. Alright, so before I get to the stitch markers, let's just make sure that we've done this correctly. So these go down, then up, down, then up, down, then up. Or in other words, we have a back cross, a front cross, back cross, front cross, back cross, front cross, meaning I crossed in front. All right, so now we come again to these stitch markers, and you know what to do. 2 double crochets in each of these stitches. And 2 more in that last stitch. To show you, I've put 2 stitches in each of those that are between the stitch markers. Now I'm going to go ahead and move my stitch marker to the 3rd stitch and to the 6th stitch. Alright, so now that I've moved the stitch markers, getting them ready for the next row, we're ready to complete the rest of these. So the rest of these stitches are in pattern stitch, and we're going to do it again. Skip the next 2 stitches, front post treble, and those next 2 stitches, and again we start with a back cross. Working behind those 2 stitches, we work front post trebles in those 2 stitches that we just skipped. Just like that. And then skip 2, and then we work a front cross with 2 front post trebles, and then working in front of those 2 stitches, we front post treble in those 2 stitches that we skipped. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and finish out the row again, making sure as these crosses are crocheted, they go down and then up, down and up, or back cross, front cross, back cross, front cross, etc. So go ahead and do that, and I'll show you how this row ends. And row 7 ends just like the rest of the rows with 3 double crochets in that turning chain. Let's pause and take a look at how these are coming out. Might be a little tricky to see, but you can see a honeycomb here and how it's framed perfectly within this honeycomb. Honeycomb here. And let's check the other side. And that's how you know if you've done it right too, that these are going in the correct directions. So you have the bottom of a honeycomb here. We've got one formed here, one formed here, etc. All right. So now we go on to row number 8, which is the same as row number 6. It's just the numbers are going to be more. Chain 3. We're going to work 2 double crochets in that first stitch, again maintaining those increases regularly, and then we work the back post double crochets. And I'm going to talk you through the rest of this because you've seen this a few times. Back post double crochets in each stitch until you get to the first stitch marker. You get to the first stitch marker, 2 double crochets in each of those next 4 stitches. All right, and after that, move the stitch markers to the 4 center of the stitches that you just added, which again is going to be the 3rd and the 6th stitch that you put these into. And then we resume back post double crochets over each of these stitches, and then 3 double crochets into that turning chain. So go ahead and finish row number 8. This is what you should have after completing 8 rows. Now on to row 9, which again is a repeat of row number 3. I'm just going to talk you through this one. We're going to chain 3, 2 double crochets in that first stitch, and then we begin the pattern stitch. Skip 2 stitches, front post treble in the first 2, working behind these 2, we work front post trebles in the 2 stitches. So we begin with a back cross, and then we have a front cross, back cross, front cross, back cross, front cross, back cross, and then a front cross. Work over these last 4 stitches. And again, once you get to the stitch markers, 2, 2, 2, and 2 in each of these, 2 double crochets in each of these stitches. Go ahead and move the stitch markers after that. And then again, we do a back cross, front cross, back cross, front cross, etc. all the way across. And then we work 3 double crochets in that turning chain. So again, like I said before, it's a repeat of row 3. It's just that you're going to have more repeats or more stitches. And again, you see how another honeycomb is forming here. There's one here, one here, one here. They're embedded within one another. So make sure that that pattern is continuing, and when you stop here, make sure that you double check to make sure that the stitches have crossed in the manner that you want them to be. This is what we should have after completing 9 rows. And let's go ahead and take a look at the honeycomb. So where we started, we have 1, 2 complete honeycombs. You can see the outline of one here and one here. Now we're going to work one more row. Working in the honeycomb pattern, we're going to work the row with the back post double crochets, and I'll show that to you in just a second. But then after that, we're going to switch to the multicolored yarn, and I think this is going to be really fun. So let's go ahead and start row 10. Again, you've already done this. I'm just going to start you off with those chain 3s and 2 double crochets in that first stitch. So after those first 2 stitches, we're going to work back post double crochets in each stitch until we get to the stitch markers, and then you know what to do: 2, 2, 2, and 2. Double crochet 2 stitches in each of these stitches. Move your stitch markers to the center 4 stitches, which is going to be the 3rd and the 6th stitch of that section, and then we resume with back post double crochets across the rest of the row, and then we're going to work 3 double crochets in that turning chain. So now the next row we're going to do is called the low front ridge, and it's worked only in the front loops. And this is going to help to create a border between what we have just worked and the next section of the scarf. So now to begin the low front ridge, we're going to chain 1, and working in the front loops only, we're going to work a slip stitch in each stitch across. And this is not a row that's going to necessarily affect the stitch count, because the stitch count is going to stay the same as the last row, but the next row that we work after this will. So go ahead and work slip stitches in each stitch across, now including where you have moved the stitch markers. I haven't moved mine yet, but I'm going to. But go ahead and just work slip stitches in each of these. We're not increasing on this part. After working the slip stitch just all the way across, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Now they're going to stand out even more after the next row that we work. And go into that turning chain and work another slip stitch. But actually, before you do that, let's go ahead and pull the new color in through that turning chain, just like that. And then we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. We're going to turn. Now technically, we're still working in the last 2 rows ago, because let me explain why. This is a surface decoration or a surface stitch. It does not affect the stitch count. All right, so let's go ahead and turn. And now let's go ahead. We're going to try to keep this. We'll need to clip that. Let's go ahead and, okay, so I've clipped that. I'm not going to tie these together. I'm going to work them into the work once we get to the finishing section. Okay, so now we are going to be working in the remaining loop, which is right here. And we're going to start, let's go ahead and pull the other extra strand aside. So the first loop is right here. We're going to work 2 double crochets in that same stitch, and then 1 in each of these remaining loops. Now if you're not sure where this is, find where that it was a back post double crochet, which is right here, and that single loop is right there. So go ahead and work these until you get to the stitch markers. Once you get to where the stitch markers are, we're going to work 2 double crochets in each of those stitches. Again, just working in that single strand, the remaining loop. So 2, 2, 2, and 2. Just want to keep those stitch increases going so that the shawl grows appropriately. All right, so after we've worked 2, 4, 6, 8, let's go ahead and I'm going to move the stitch markers again to the 3rd and to the 6th stitch. And then from this point on, we are just going to work double crochets in each of those stitches all the way across. And when you get to the end, we're going to work 3 double crochets into the turning chain, just the way we've been doing. I'm going to go ahead and give you the next 3 rows after this. We're going to turn, chain 3. We're going to work 2 double crochets in that first stitch, and then working in both loops. Once you, well, let me go ahead and show you. So once you turn, we're going to be working in both loops. Let me do that again. Both loops. And we're going to double crochet in each stitch across, with the exception of the stitch marker section. We're going to have those marked with our stitch markers. When you get to the 3rd or the first place where the stitch is marked, we work 2, 2, 2, and 2. We're remaining, continuing to do those increases in the center, just the way we've been doing all along. So go ahead and complete this row, and then 3 additional rows working in through the top loops in the same manner. So let me show you what I've done. I have worked 5 rows of the double crochets instead of 4. So we have worked that low front ridge, row 1, and then we worked a row of double crochets behind that, and again increasing as we have, using those stitch markers in those 4 center stitches. We're going to continue doing that. And then I worked 1, 2, 3, 4 additional rows of the double crochet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do just what we did down here with the low front ridge. Go ahead and get set up to do that. So we're going to work a chain 1, and starting in that first stitch, we're going to slip stitch, working only in that front loop. We're going to slip stitch in each stitch all the way across. Now remember, this is just a surface stitch. We're not going to do any increases here, but simply work that slip stitch just the way we did here. All right, so go ahead and work that, and then once we finish this row, we're going to switch to this beautiful colored yarn. That slip stitch in the front loop only all the way around. I'm going to work the last one into the turning chain, but before I do that, I'm going to switch to this beautiful burnt orange color, and let's go ahead and bring this yarn into the picture just like that. Let's go ahead and chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, after that chain 3 and joining this new beautiful yarn, we're going to do something a little bit different at the beginning of this row. We are going to work 3 double crochets instead of 2. Let's go ahead and give that a little bit of a tug there. And then in the next stitch, we're going to work 2 double crochets. This is just so that when we come back on this next row, that both sides are going to be perfectly symmetrical. All right, so now we are going to continue working just 1 double crochet into each stitch across, and as you can see, I am working in that remaining loop just like we did several rows before this. And go ahead and work this all the way until you get to where the stitch markers are. When you get to those stitch markers, we're going to work 2 double crochets in this strand, 2, 2, and 2, just like we've been doing. And then we go back to 1 double crochet in each stitch all the way across. And then when we get to the end of this row, this last stitch here, we're going to work 3 double crochets in that last stitch. So go ahead and work row 18. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to repeat row 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so that's rows 5, 6, 7, and 8. We're going to repeat those 3 times. And I'll show you how this is going to interact with the additional stitches up here where we're doing our increases every row. But we're going to what we do in those 4 rows, we're going to repeat that a total of 3 times over here. After we do that, we are going to repeat the low front ridge followed by the color change with the multicolored yarn. So we will work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of the double crochets followed by another low front ridge, and then we're going to do a color change back to the blue, and then again repeat all of this again. So we're just going to continually repeat this. Now the only thing that's going to be different from this section and the additional section here is, let me just show you. I just want you to get a visual of what I'm doing. Okay, so we have 1, 2 honeycombs deep. When you work that section up here, it's going to be 3 honeycombs deep. It's going to be a little bit larger. It's going to have 4 additional rows in this section before you change to the low front ridge and then the 5 rows of the double crochet. All right, so I'll have those numbers across the bottom of the screen, like I said, and go ahead and repeat. If you need to have stitch support for how row 5 transpires, just look across the bottom of the screen for that time mark. Now I will show you as I get to this section, like I said, I will show you how this interacts because it may be a little bit different. So I will show that to you, and just keep that in mind as you work those repeats. Just wanted to show you as we work this honeycomb stitch how this works all the way up until we get to the stitch where the stitch marker is, and just as a review, 2 double crochets in each of those stitches. And so I'll go ahead and do that, and then we resume the honeycomb stitch on the very next stitch. And just again, as a review, this is included in the assignment that's already been given. Make sure that you end with 3 double crochets in that last stitch. Also, on subsequent repeats, remember as you work this first row, before we work the honeycomb stitch, when you do the color change, make sure that you work the 3 stitches in the first stitch and then 2 stitches in the second stitch, just to make up for the numerical differences when working some of these other rows. All right, so go ahead and work those repeats. All right, so let me go ahead and take a break and show you what I have done with this particular motif, and I'll explain as I go. Okay, so we have the beginning part that we started with the blue-green color, and then we have the multicolor with the 5 rows of the double crochets, and then the low front ridge, and then we have the yarn change where we worked the double crochet in the remaining loop, and then we worked the beautiful burnt orange color. We have 1, 2, 3 complete honeycombs on this. And let me speak into this just a minute. If you are using, let's say, stash yarn for this particular project, and you don't have enough yarn to work as many rows of these different motifs, you can just change the number. Just make sure that you work an even number of the honeycomb stitch. Okay, so I have 1, 2, there are 3 completed motifs of the honeycomb in this particular section. Now I'm going to show you the next section. Okay, again, we have the 5 rows of the multicolor with the low front ridge, and let me show you that I just maintained moving my stitch markers each time so that I would continue to do the increases in the center of the shawl as well. Now coming back to this section, I only worked 1, 2 and a half honeycombs. That's not going to affect the way this motif looks at all, because you can very clearly see that it is the same motif, but I worked fewer rows. And if you're looking for the specific numbers, look across the bottom of the screen. I'll tell you how many rows that I've completed so far, but if you want to get the pattern, you can get the absolute, specifics, the row counts, and all of that will be written out for you. I just feel like it's too much information to bombard you with through this video, and honestly, if you're working the stitches correctly, you really don't necessarily need all that information. All right, so, and then after, again, the blue, I switched back. Again, with every row, I worked a low front ridge to switch over. And again, I've already covered that in the instructions. I'm just showing you in general how this is coming. And so then I worked another 5 rows with the multicolor and again, low front ridge. And this is where I am going to transition to something different. After that low front ridge, I worked the double crochet in the remaining loop. And now, instead of going back to the honeycomb, this is large enough for me to go ahead and transition to ribbing on the end. So I just wanted to explain all of that. And before we get started, let me just give you a view from the direction that this is going to be worn. And I think you'll really get a good view of the colors. I just think this combination is stunning. Again, attributing it to the skill of the yarn indie dyer that I am working with on this particular project. All right, so let's go ahead and I'll show you how to transition to the ribbing. But as I explain this, as I have already explained, if you want to make this larger than what I am doing, just continue to repeat the motif, the honeycomb, and then, you know, the colorful changing yarn in between. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the ribbon. Okay, so now we've turned to work the ribbing. And what we're going to do for this is we're going to chain 3, just like we've been doing. We're going to work 2 double crochets in that first stitch. We're still increasing. Now we're going to begin the ribbing. We're going to work a front post double crochet in the next stitch, and then a back post double crochet, front post double crochet, and then a back post double crochet. We're just going to work this all the way until we get to the stitch markers at the center. Let me go ahead and show you that. So once we get to the stitch markers at the center of the shawl, I'll show you how to add the increases. And yes, we are going to continue to increase even with the ribbing, and I will show you how I want you to do that. All right, I've worked this all the way until I got to the stitch marker. Now, the last stitch that I worked was a back post. If by chance the last stitch that you worked when you get to this point was a front post, then we're just going to alternate with a back post then a front post, okay? But since I've started or worked a back post last, and then I get to the stitch marker, I'm going to work a front post in that next stitch. And then I'm going to come in from behind and also work a back post in that same stitch. And that's how I'm going to double the stitches in these 4 stitches. So we're going to work a front post and then a back post in the same stitch, and 2 more to do that in. Front post and then a back post, and then 1 more front post. These are all front post double crochets, of course, and then again around the same post. It's a little tricky. I'm trying to work around these stitch markers. There we go. And then a back post. So I had a back post here. Then we just continue on to the end of this row with alternating front post and back post, etc. Front post and then back post, just like that. And just like we've been doing, when you get to the end of the row, make sure you work 3. I'll go ahead and show that to you now. At the end of this row in the turning chain, you're going to work 3 double crochets into that turning chain, turn, and then you will again begin the front and the back post double crochets. And as you work these post stitches, be sure that the front post are worked over the front post and the back post are worked over the back post so that you maintain this ridge. So now I'm on row 3 of the ribbing, and I am approaching the stitch markers. Let me just show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove the stitch markers because we're not going to do any more increases. So again, this is for row 3 of the ribbing. Now we did do those increases on the second row by working 2 stitches, a front post and a back post, in 4 of those central stitches where we've been adding in the increases. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to work some of these stitches with you. And as we go around the corner here, again, do not add additional stitches. You should be fine without doing that, because this will be this will take care of itself with the roundedness and so forth. All right, so just wanted to be very clear. Rows for the ribbing. Work front post and back post all the way across. And again, do not add additional stitches in the corner. So go ahead and work the ribbing until you have a total of 4 rows. And then we're going to fasten off at the end and hide the loose strand. And then after that, we have one more thing to do. We are going to work along the row ends using our multicolored yarn and try to give that a finished look as well. After completing the ribbing, this is what I have. Let me go ahead and turn this around and show you how nice this looks. So now what we're going to do is add the ribbing to this side of the scarf, starting in the corner, and we're going to be using the color changing yarn. I'm trying to use as much of this yarn for this design as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the front side facing, and I am going to work double crochets evenly all the way across for this first row. So let me go ahead and start you on. Another word about the loose ends. You may decide to hide them now, or you can wait and hide them once we complete the project. I'm going to go ahead and hold off and wait, but you can do it either way. All right, so let's go ahead and get this joined. We're going to go ahead and join it in the first stitch. Make my slip knot in the yarn that I'm joining. Just makes it a lot easier to join. 1, 2, 3 is chain 3, and I'm going to work one more double crochet in the same space as joining, and then we're going to work 2 double crochets in the next row end. I'm going to work 1, 2. So after working that second double crochet, I'm going to go ahead and work another one, make 3 in that second row end. And to be honest with you, the number of stitches that you put in these row ends is not so important as making sure that the stitches are even as you put them in. So let's go ahead. I'm going to work 3 in this next row end, where this is where the ribbing was worked. Now getting to this section, which is more the body of the work, I think 2 double crochets per row end is going to be sufficient. So let me work some of these for you, and I'll show you how this is going to look. Again, just working straight up double crochets for this row. Let's do just a couple more, so I'll show you what it will look like as you go across for this foundation row. Okay, so go ahead, and that's what you have now. As you're working across, if you feel you need to do fewer, you can. But the idea is you want to make sure that this is going to lay flat, and we are going to be adding the ribbed stitches to this after this as well. And let me just show you also, we're also going to be decreasing at the end of the rows instead of increasing, and I'll show you how to do that. So go ahead and work this all the way across, and I'll show you how this row ends. So after working the first row, this is what you should have. Now I'm not going to give an exact count on these stitches, because depending on your personal crochet style, you might have fewer or you may have more in order for this to be nice and even. Okay, so now we're going to turn for the next row, and this is how we're going to finish the remaining rows. We're going to go ahead and chain 2, We're not chaining 3 now, we're only chaining 2 because we're getting ready to work a decrease. I'm going to skip that first stitch and I'm going to pull up a loop in the next stitch and pull up a loop in the next stitch like this. 4 loops on the hook. Go ahead and pull that through, and then now we're going to start in the 4th stitch. Let's go ahead and look at that. So we have 1, 2, 3. It's the 4th stitch that we're going to be starting in, and we're going to work a front post double crochet followed by a back post double crochet, and we're going to work that all the way across until we get to the end. And when you get to the end of the 2nd row of this ribbing, which is along the straight edge, I'll show you how we're going to end that, and I'll give you a hint. It's going to end with another decrease, and that's just so that this edge is going to be kind of a nice transition. So once you have 3 stitches plus the turning chain remaining at the end of the row, we're going to skip the first stitch and we're going to work in the top loops of that next stitch. There we go. Pull up a loop, and in the next stitch as well, we're going to leave that turning chain as is, not going to work in it. Pull through all 4 loops so we have our decrease on this end as well. Turn, let's chain 2. You're going to skip that first stitch, and then the next stitch, pull up a loop, and in the next stitch, pull up a loop so that we're decreasing over those 3 stitches just like that. Okay, and then we're going to resume. We're going to resume with a back post. You may have a front post in your case, but just resume back, working that ribbing stitch all the way across the row. And at the end of this row, which is row 3 on the straight side, we're going to also end with a decrease just the way we worked here. Wait till you have the last 3 stitches and then skip the first, and then pulling up loops in the next 2. That's how we're going to end the row number 3. After row 3, work 1 more row, row 4, and then fasten off and hide your loose ends. Well, I hope you enjoyed making my Phoenix shawl today. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment in the comment section below. God bless. Bye-bye.